Hey kids, welcome back to Library with Nick. It's great to see all of you today. Some of you have been reading this story this week, Grandpa Stops a War. Some of you read it last week, depending on which class you're in. Well, we've been looking all November in library at different ways we see empathy show up in our world. We read some fictional stories where it helped us connect with the idea of empathy, where we understand what other people are feeling. We understand other people's emotions. And this last week, we've been looking at what does that look like in the real world? How do people use empathy all around them? So if you read this week, or you're still going to read it, we're looking at how this man, Paul Robeson, shows empathy and how he uses that to help people in the world. In this case, it was to help people who were suffering in the Spanish Civil War. Today, I want to read a different story. Some of you read this last week, but for those that didn't, we're going to be reading Finding Winnie. And I like this story a lot. There's a lot of things to like in it. It's a beautiful, true story. And once again, we're looking at the genre of nonfiction today. And if you remember our definition for genre, it's a type of book. And so we look for things like, does it have facts that back it up? Are the characters real? Is the setting real? And is the story real? All right, and the pictures as well. So we're looking at this story with empathy and seeing how one man's empathetic actions changed an entire world of literature. And in this case, it's Captain Harry Colburn. And it also takes place a similar time period as Grandpa Stops a War. It's actually a few years earlier. But he has empathy for this little bear right here. And that starts a whole chain of events that eventually leads us to having Winnie the Pooh as a character in children's literature. So let's read to find out how Harry Colburn's single act of empathy and really trying to understand how someone else feels, or in this case, another animal feels, changed our world for the better. All right, let's get started. Before I begin, as usual, I like to say a couple things that never change. Now, since we're doing a video, I don't have to go over expectations, but I will still say the first two things. And the first one is always, I like you just the way you are. Remember, that doesn't change no matter what's going on in your life or what's going on in my life. If you're having a good day or a bad day, or I'm too tired, or maybe you're a little grumpy, that doesn't change. And the second one, as always, is I'm happy to see you today. Even though I'm talking to my camera and looking at the video, I'm still happy knowing that you get to listen to a story today, and I'm imagining all your wonderful smiling faces during this. All right, let's get started. So this is Finding Winnie, the true story of the world's most famous bear, by Lindsay Maddock, illustrated by Sophie Blackell. Could you tell me a story? Asked Cole. It's awfully late. It was long past dark and time to be asleep. What kind of story? You know, a true story. The one about a bear. We cuddled up close. I'll do my best, I said. A very long time ago, about 100 years before you were born, there was a veterinarian who lived in Winnipeg, Canada. His name was Harry Colburn. A vegetarian? Said Cole. Bears don't like vegetables. A veterinarian. It means an animal doctor. Oh, I know that, Cole said. That's what I'm going to maybe be when I'm big. If a horse had the hiccups or a cow had a cold, Harry knew just how to make them feel right. Harry's hands were never cold, even in Winnipeg, where the winters were cold and so frosty that icicles grew on the insides of your nose. That was just the kind of doctor he was. But a day came when Harry had to say goodbye to Winnipeg. There was a war far, far away, beyond the end of the country and on the other side of the ocean, and he was going to help. He would be caring for the soldiers' horses. Harry rode east on a train full of other soldiers. He leaned his head against the window, watching the land scroll by, wondering what it would be like to be far away from home. The train rolled right through dinner and over the sunset and around 10 o'clock and into a nap out the next day, until it stopped at a place called White River. Harry decided to stretch his legs. On the train platform was a man on a bench with a baby. A baby? Said Cole, annoyed. A baby bear. A cub. Harry stopped. It's not every day that you see a bear cub at a train station. Well, that bear has lost his mother, he thought, and that man must be the trapper who got her. What do trappers do? Asked Cole. Well, it's what they don't do. They don't raise baby bears. Raise them? You know, I said. Love them. Harry thought for a long time, and then he said to himself, there is something special about that bear. He felt inside his pocket and said, I shouldn't. He paced back and forth and said, I can't. And then his heart made up his mind, and he walked up to the trapper and said, I'll give you $20 for the bear. Is $20 a lot? Asked Cole. Back then, I said, even more than a lot. I love how the illustrator shows the different, so you don't even need the words. You can see exactly what's happening. Captain Colburn, said the colonel on the train, as the little bear sniffed at his knees. We are on a journey of thousands of miles, heading into the thick of battle, and you propose to bring this most dangerous creature. The bear stood straight up on her hind legs, as if to salute the colonel. The colonel stopped speaking at once, and then in quite a different voice said, Oh, hello. The men of Harry's regiment squeezed by to have a look. I've decided to name her Winnipeg, Harry told them, so we'll never be far from home. Winnie, for short. They had a very long way to travel, and they had already gone 3 or 4 feet when Winnie grew hungry. Well, what do bears eat? The men wondered. Huh, what don't they eat? Said Harry. Vegetables, Cole reminded me. Well, Winnie ate vegetables, I said. She actually ate everything, except onions. They brought her carrots and potatoes and apples and tomatoes and eggs and beans and bread and a tin of fish and some slop in a dish, but Winnie was still hungry. How about dessert? Said Harry, holding up a bottle of condensed milk. Taking the treat in her paws, Winnie lay on her back and hummed a happy song as she drank. The men roared with laughter. Harry and Winnie gathered with soldiers from all over Canada in the green fields of Valcartier. A whole city of tents had sprung up there. One was a hospital for horses. That's where Harry went to work. Winnie was in the army now, and Harry taught her to stand up straight, to hold her head high, and turn this way and that, just so. Soon, she was assigned her own post. Even the colonel agreed that Winnie was a remarkable bear. She might have been the best navigator in the whole army. If you hid something, could she find it? She certainly could. And what if it was farther away and farther still? Remarkable, he cried. You can see the little path that Winnie follows all around the campsite to find something. In the evening, both of them were too tired to move. When Harry thought about Winnie and the voyage across the ocean, his head said, I shouldn't. His head said, I can't. But then his heart made up his mind. Just like we read about with Paul Robeson, I like that idea of his heart made up his mind. And we do have to use our heads to think our decisions through sometimes. But often when we're using empathy, we're connecting with someone on an emotional level, or in this case, a bear. And sometimes it can be good to let our heart make up our minds, recognizing that we should understand how someone else feels or something else feels. And that can help us make our decisions for ourselves, whether it's helping someone or sharing in their joy, can be a good thing. Nobody had ever tried to float so many people and animals across the Atlantic Ocean before. 30 ships sailed together, carrying about 36,000 men and about 7,500 horses, and about one bear named Winnie. When they finally arrived in England, the regiment went to training on the Salisbury Plain, where it rained and rained and rained. But Winnie didn't seem to mind. She was the mascot of the 2nd Canadian Infantry Brigade, and she attended her post with vigor. One day, Harry came running while she was doing her exercises in the tent. "Oh, you'll bring the whole place down," he said with a laugh. My, how she had grown. Oof. Does look pretty miserable, doesn't it? It was winter when the order came. The time had come to fight. Winnie posed proudly with the men for pictures to send home to their families. Harry thought for a long time. His head argued one way and then the other, but his heart made up his mind. He went to Winnie and said in a serious way, "There's somewhere we need to go." Winnie brushed the mud off of her nose and nuzzled in close. Harry drove all the way to the big city. "Here we are," said Harry. "The London Zoo." Harry took a deep breath. "Winnie, this is just going to be your home for a while," he said. She tilted her head. "We're shipping out to France," he explained, "and I have to take care of the horses at the front." She rested her big head against him. "I know you want to come, but it's not safe." Winnie's head bowed. Harry's hands were warm as sunshine as usual. "There is something you must always remember," Harry said. "It's the most important thing, really. Even if we're apart, I'll always love you, and you'll always be my bear." Is that the end? Well, that's the end of Harry and Winnie's story, I said. "But I don't want it to be over," said Cole. "Well, sometimes," I said, "you have to let one story end so the next one can begin." "How do you know when that will happen?" "You don't," I said, "which is why you should always carry on." Once upon a time, there was a little boy with a stuffed bear. He'd had his bear ever since he was a baby, but somehow the boy had never found the right name for him. He tried Teddy and Edward and even Big Bear. One day, the boy went to visit the London Zoo with his father, and there was a bear, a real bear, on the terraces there. Right away, the boy thought, "There's something special about that bear." Her name was Winnie. They became true friends. The boy was even allowed to come right inside her enclosure to play. Once the boy had found Winnie, he knew just what to call his stuffed bear. He named it Winnie the Pooh. And the boy was called Cole, said Cole.
No, his name was Christopher Robin. Christopher Robin Milne. Christopher Robin would visit Winnie at the zoo, and then he would take his stuffed animal bear on all sorts of adventures in the woods behind his home. His father, Alexander Milne, or A. Milne, wrote books about all of their adventures. Harry's Winnie became Winnie the Pooh, and there's never been a more beloved bear. But what about Harry? Cole asked. When Harry visited Winnie at the zoo, he saw how happy she was and how she was being raised. She was truly loved. And that was all he'd ever wanted from the moment they met on the train station in White River. So after the war, Harry returned to Winnipeg and his life as an animal doctor. And before long, he was married and had a son named Fred. And Fred had a daughter named Lorene, and Lorene had a daughter named Lindsay, which is me. And I had a son. And when I saw you, I thought, there is something special about this boy. So I named you after your great-great-grandfather, Captain Harry Colburn. I named you Cole. That's me? Said Cole in a whisper. That's you. And that's Winnie? Yes, I said, that's Winnie. And it's all true? Sometimes the best stories are, I said. Cole's eyes grew big, and he said nothing for a long time. And then he hugged his own bear close and let out a yawn that reached far away. And they both turned over and fell asleep.
And one of the things that we've looked at when we look at nonfiction books, especially if they're picture books, is we look at the end. We see if there's an author's note or some kind of bibliography or sources or facts that back up the story. So all the things we've seen in the story so far show it's a nonfiction story, right? There's real characters, there's real places like France and Canada. The characters all seem real, and the events are based on real stuff. So now we're looking at the back and we can see there's actually some photographs and facts to back it up too. Here's a picture of Harry as a young soldier. Harry kept a diary throughout World War I. This was the diary from 1914, the first year of the war. The diary page from the day Harry found Winnie. On August 24th, 1914, he wrote, "Bought bear, $20. 3 soldiers with Winnie at her post. Winnie and Harry have what appears to be a laugh and a snack. Harry and his fellow soldiers with their mascot, Winnie. You can see she's sitting in his lap right there. This picture of Winnie and Harry inspired the statues that now stand in Winnipeg and London. The Statue of Winnipeg was unveiled in 1992. And here's this photo was taken of Winnie and Christopher Robin in 1925 at the zoo after they became friends. Christopher Robin's father, A. Milne, watched them play from above. You can barely see through the bars here. There's someone watching them from above. And that's Christopher Robin, the boy playing with the bear, right in the enclosure. This official record card shows that Winnie began her stay at the London Zoo on December 9th, 1914. And Lindsay and Cole. I like that story a lot. I actually like both of the stories we've been reading this week because they remind me that if we have empathy, if we try to understand how other people and other things are feeling, it can lead us into great acts of kindness. And they may be simple things, as saving a bear, or they may be bigger things, like we saw with Paul Robeson, going and actually trying to bring peace in a war zone. But simple acts of kindness can change our world for the better. And that's one of the main reasons that we need to understand empathy and we need to practice showing it, even if it's in simple ways, like helping out a friend who needs or sharing in someone else's laughter. All right, kids, that's all I have for today. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I'll see you next time. Remember, you make each day special just by being you.